We're joined by two academics with practical experience of the issue, joining us for the next 10 minutes to discuss this fully. Olivette Otele is a Doctor of Humanities at Bath Spa University in England. Olivette taught in the deprived Paris suburbs. Olivette, they're often referred to as deprived, but I'm sure you'll agree that deprived places often are very vibrant. The type of youngsters that you taught, how would you have described them? How would you categorise them?
Well, my experience over there was of immense despair and at the same time extreme joy, because we talk about deprived areas, but we found also people who are resilient, people who are working hard to support their families. And from time to time, you have a tiny minority of people who cannot overcome the fact that they've suffered from so many things, discrimination, poverty, etc., to a certain extent, and they have no power, and therefore they turn, that's one of the reasons, some of the reasons, they turn to extremist, extremist version of Islam. But in most cases, these are people who are not in favour of these attacks.
Olivette, bear with us for a second. I'll introduce our other guest, a person, of course, known to you, Iftikhar Malik, Professor at Oxford University, renowned specialist on issues related to radicalisation. Iftikhar joining us by phone. Iftikhar, thanks for being with us.
Good evening.
Good evening to you, sir. And thanks again for being with us here on France 24. Can I jump straight in with you and ask, why do two young men from Brussels turn into suicide bombers who kill over 30 people, effectively in their own home city?
I think, as Olivette was saying, that there are issues of multiple kinds. I mean, there is no single factor explanation. I mean, of course, it's a very sad event. I mean, these events have been happening more often in Europe, and they have been happening in Africa, in the Middle East, and in Southwest Asia. I think there are political drivers, there are economic drivers, there are personal drivers, there are some theological issues, there are class issues, there are issues dealing with discrimination. And I think generally what we have seen is that there is a wide variety of young people who are willing to kill themselves and who are willing to kill lots of innocent people. And this is a kind of wave that we see, especially since 9/11. I mean, sociologists, historians, psychologists, and policymakers have come up with all kind of explanations. Some people focus on foreign policy issues, that since 9/11, the war on terror has become war on Muslims, which I think has been internalized by lots of younger people. So I think the macro issues of the Muslim world and the tense relationship between Western powers and the Muslim societies converge with personal grievances that some of these young people have, especially in Europe, the second generation, third generation Muslims. So there are lots of explanation, but no single factor explanation is valid here.
Bear with us, Iftikhar. Let's bring Olivette back in. Now, Olivette, in terms of, you mentioned it is a small minority of people, but there will be more people beyond those who perhaps would shelter or not denounce or tell on these people, go to the police, provide information. What makes them hide these people?
That's exactly my concern here, and I think we really need to work together, because the people who might not go into jihad or actually turn into suicide bombers are those who are sympathizers, in the sense that they are convinced that there are broader forces at work here, and then they need to do their part. They cannot blow themselves up, but they can actually kind of provide logistic and all sorts of help. And these people are the ones I think we need to talk to, we need to target in terms of establishing a stronger dialogue. This is a difficult conversation, but we need to have it. We need to talk to these people and try and understand what is going on, because not all of them will ever go to that extreme. However, they're actually in the middle, they're ambivalent, and that is the time to actually establish that dialogue. The time is really now.
We hope that they're watching this broadcast, they see what you're saying, Olivette. Let's bring Iftikhar back in to get a comment on that one. In terms of people sheltering, harbouring, maybe that's too strong, but I'm sure that has happened. Salah Abdeslam, for instance, got out of Paris, got to Brussels, was there for, well, since November, we're led to believe, finally captured only 4 days ago.
Yes, I think you're really right that there are lots of these issues, and I think the communities have to confront it. The communities on all sides I'm talking about, and here I think the role of parents is very important. I think they should be talking to these young people. I think the governments are coming up with all kind of policies which are rather exceptionalizing Muslims, and perhaps making these marginalized younger Muslims even more alienated. So on the one hand, I think we have to reconnect with these young people, and at the same time, we should make sure that our intelligence networks are pretty vigilant, and there are no gaps. And I think there have been gaps in the case of Belgium, especially after the atrocities in Paris. But I think at the same time, my feeling is that there are quite a few young people in the Muslim world, and especially in Europe, who need to be taken into some kind of interface with the peers. Peers could be their parents, could be their schools, could be their neighbors, could be mosques, and could be the government agencies. And I think there is quite a bit of vacuum in terms of connection. And my worry is that lots of these young people are being seen as culprits, they're being seen as suspects, they're being seen as criminals, and they are becoming recruits for Islamic State. I think today's article in Washington Post by Dr. Arun Kundani highlights that lots of these young people feel that they are being pushed towards Islamic State. So I think we have to undertake lots of different initiatives.
Someone in my position, sorry, Olivette, you're in a second. Someone in my position, a white man from a working class background, may be described as a deprived background. I can't begin to understand what these young non-white kids are going through. Olivette, comment on that, please.
Well, I just want you to come back to something. I
Go
want
ahead.
to emphasize that the face of counterterrorism is not necessarily the people we've seen on telly recently. The face of counterterrorism so far, it looks like mothers, cousins, brothers, local activists, and all sorts of people who have been actually working to bring towards de-escalating certain situations and bringing young people, preventing them from actually joining. Because if you can imagine that if all of them, all the deprived one, have decided to actually join the IS, we wouldn't be where we are now. So most of the people we're talking about have been doing the work, but they need means and extreme support to continue to do what they're already doing.
And that's is that to be given by the government, Olivette?
Yes, but also the broader society, not just see this as a minority problem, because it is our problem, all of us, every single one of us, from all background, ethnicity, religion, etc. You talked about somebody coming from a white background, deprived and white background. I can understand that. However, the articulation between poverty and discrimination has given birth to a new generation of young people who consider that they have nothing else to lose. Okay, so there's discrimination and there's poverty. So
poverty, racism, it is a volatile combination. Iftikhar, the news today about 400 to 600 ISIS, Islamic State trained fighters having been dispatched back into Europe, maybe is now underlining just how international this problem is. And obviously, in terms of combating this, an international response is necessary. Do you think that is possible?
I think it is very valid to look at these issues. I mean, there have been so many innocent victims in Turkey. We saw in Ankara, twice this thing has happened. Just a few days ago in Istanbul, we saw a suicide bombing. In Pakistan, schools, universities, and colleges have been attacked. And we see that happening every day in Syria and Iraq. And we have seen that happening in Mali and Ivory Coast and in northeastern Nigeria. So there is a kind of global trend to terrorism. And I think we have to look at the issues, at the drivers. Why, how come these young people are being driven to this kind of extreme, killing themselves and killing lots of innocent people around, and they're looking for soft targets. I mean, this is a new strategy. They are getting lots of publicity. I think media will have to be more responsible in giving coverage to these people and also to the Islamic State. Maybe this is what they want, more coverage, more attractions.
They certainly want coverage, definitely.
So I think we have to look at all kind of, also I think mosques and first generation, second generation Muslims, they have to reconnect with these younger people who are not finding jobs, maybe who are being discriminated. Many of them are dropouts. Of course, some of them have been graduates from universities. Some of them have been science students. I mean, today's report on the BBC from London, I mean, two young Muslims have been convicted, and both of them come from very privileged families. One of them is a son of a Saudi diplomat. So why it's not just underprivileged people, there are some privileged young Muslims who have internalized this anger to the society at large. And the society at large is not just non-Muslims, they are fellow Muslims as well. So on the one hand, these people are perpetrators. At the same time, these people are victims. And so far, we are only looking at security aspect of it. And I think, securitization of this whole spectrum of policy is not being helpful. I think we have to reconnect with these younger people. We have to look at the issues of class. We have to look at the issues of coercion. We have to look at the issues of racism. Why these people who in some cases are qualified, who are full of energies, they're not getting opportunities, and then they're taking it out on their own.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off. We're out of time. Thank you, sir, very much indeed. But we're getting the message loud and clear. Iftikhar Malik, they're Professor at Oxford and at Basra University, specialist on radicalisation. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And to Olivette Otele, again from Basra University, doctor in humanities, specialist on colonialism, and of course with wide experience teaching here in the Paris suburbs.